Hello and welcome to Innovation Academy podcast. Today we have a wonderful guest, Lina Žemaitytė Kirkman. Lina is currently the head of ROCKIT, home of Fintech and sustainable innovation. She is also a digital well-being expert, educating businesses and people on how technology impacts humans and how to thrive in the digital age. Hello and welcome, Lina.
Hello, so nice to be here. Pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah. Lina, how are you doing today? It's such a hot weather here in Vilnius.
Yeah, it's actually quite good. We were talking with the colleagues that despite the summertime, we actually appreciate being in office where is the air conditioning, and yet we still get to enjoy the good weather after the working hours are finished. So summer vibes, it's all good.
Yeah. What about the holidays? Have you had yours already?
I'm going on next week. So yes, the last 2 weeks of August before the 1st of September comes. Yeah, I'll actually disconnect and just be well without digital devices.
Oh, okay. You know, I started this conversation talking about holidays intentionally, as we are going to talk today about digital well-being. And I'm sure that not everyone from our listeners know what this means. So, Lina, could you please describe what is digital well-being?
Okay, so if to say it in one sentence, actually it's a very wide topic, so I won't be able to say it in one sentence, but the one sentence could sound like that digital well-being, it's our healthy relationship with technologies, whether it's at work or personally. Now, what does that mean, technologies, and what does it mean, healthy relationship, right? So if to think, imagine, I don't have slides, but imagine a pie chart or a pizza with 8 slices, right? So, and each slide represents like an area in your life where digital devices can affect you. Mm-hmm. So the first and one most common one, especially the one that organizations care about, is the productivity. So how us working on digital devices affect our productivity. And we know that because we connected to internet, information is not scarce anymore, right? The statistics are that each of us get an equivalent of 175 newspapers of information a day bombarded at us, right? So the idea is not how to get information. The idea is how to distance yourself and to be able to focus, right? So how to be able to manage distractions, how to be able to focus. At work, for example, 60% of our distractions happen because of the technologies of our devices, right? And that has a cost on our productivity. Also on the productivity is the tech literacy. How well do I know the digital tools and how can I use them to help me and enhance my work? We also have goal setting here. There's research that shows that, for example, having your attention spread thin, which happens to us all the time, right? Because we multitask a lot and we work on different projects at the same time. So once you have your attention spread this way, it's more difficult to master the mastery goals, the ones that you ask yourself, what sort of professional I want to be, what sort of human I want to be, what sort of parent I want to be. It's more difficult to actually give those attention. So that's digital well-being in the productivity area. The other slice of pizza is called the environment. And for me, it's very closely correlated with the other slice that is called also physical well-being. So knowledge workers as yourself and myself, we sit in front of computers and, we use our brain as our main sort of breadwinner. We sometimes forget that we are not brain on a stick, that, the brain sits in the body, that body has its own needs, and that actually we create the devices not for our bodies, but we adapt our bodies for devices. So because the computer was created the way it is created, we sit in front of it for at least 8 hours a day. And, the doctors have been saying that sitting is the new smoking for a long time. And then you also have the sight, the myopia. There is a World Health Organization says that by 2050, half of world's population will be myopic. If you look at Seoul, South Korean capital, there was a research done that 96% of 19-year-old male there are short-sighted. And it's all because of using devices and not spending enough time outdoors, right? So that's health. Then obviously you have the blue light emission that interrupts your sleep. Interrupted sleep is interrupted. Then, if you interrupt your sleep, then your diet choices are worse. If your diet choices are worse, then your overall health is worse, and so on and so forth. So it's a ripple effect of things. Then we move it to another slice. Okay, so it's a relationships, right? So at work, this could mean the communication charter, how we communicate, what channels we choose. Do I have a right to disconnect? What are the predicted hours of our communication? This is especially important if teams work across time zones. Then we have mental health. It's actually proven that unfocused time online, not the focused where I go with the goal, I want to do something and I go online with that goal, but unfocused, just scrolling, usually leads to depression. So there's huge mental health issue there as well. Then we have the quantified self. What wearables do I wear? Does that help my health, or does that actually make me obsessed with my steps, or feel guilty that I haven't done the steps, and so on and so forth? And the last one, but not the least, and I think most complicated topic, is the digital citizenship, which is what happens to my data online. What is my digital footprint? How do I consume the content? What content I put myself out there, and so on and so forth. So it's a very broad topic. But I think if to talk about the organizations, possibly the most important ones that to look is the well-being in the physical, mental, and the productivity sort of areas. But they all very intertwined. So my personal one is always, I say, finding a balance. If I imagine a line in which in one sense it's technology is bad for you, let's go back to the caves, throw away the smartphone. And on the other end is technology overuse and maybe even addiction. I would like to have a balance where I use the technology, but I am aware of its dangers and I actually manage to balance so it helps me, not the other way around. So that's the first question in a short way.
Yeah, but I can see that it's like multidimensional topic and you can't approach from one or another angle. But, we now all work either hybrid or remote. I think a lot of our listeners, they are wondering, okay, what a huge topic. What can I do in my organization? So maybe you can tell us a little bit and talk to us about how to create a healthy virtual workplace, what elements we should take and how we can start implementing it.
Okay, so I'll step back a little bit and say that organizations don't have it on their agenda just yet, majority of them. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a gradual thing, in my opinion. So first, organizations, when they realized, that a healthy employee is a productive employee, they started talking about the physical health. This is where usually health insurance policies came in. Some of them started offering gym memberships or even having their own gym and so forth. Then after a while, there was evolution that said, okay, so we have physical health sort of sorted out. What about now our mental health? It was a bit taboo to talk about going to the, psychotherapist or even talk about it. It was taboo. But slowly it becomes not a taboo, and actually companies, they're proud that they care about their employees' mental health, and they encourage, they do workshops on burnout, on stress management, on that it's okay to call for help if you have a difficult situation, and so on. So and I think now, especially after COVID, it's been mentioned so many times, but it really has accelerated this sort of hybrid and we immersed into virtual life even more. And it has its effects because, people started feeling that it's more difficult to focus. Once COVID started, the Google search, how to focus, shot up 300%. So it's just more people realize that they cannot focus anymore because they just feel scattered. Zoom fatigue is real. Burnout is real. Task switching, which we do online a lot, is causing stress. As I mentioned, unfocused time online leads to depression. And 6 out of 10 people say that they actually have physical pains related to device usage. Even like I sit myself here, hunched, I need to remind myself to sit up straight, but it's not always good because the way maybe my laptop is set up, or even from sitting, I might have starting, lower back pain and so on, or neck pain or thumb or so. 6 out of 10 people have those pains. So I think it's inevitable that organizations have to start having it on their agenda. In essence, we need to relearn how to work because, we worked the normal old way, which is okay. So in history books already.
So exactly.
Yeah. Our kids will read about it and say, "Can't believe this was happening." Then we very quickly learned to work just from the home office. And now we're sort of going to have a hybrid because no one's going back to the office ever again, the way we used to do that. So the benefits of working in this virtual world are huge. People say they have more control of their time, they feel more productive, uh, more flexible. On the other hand, there is a feeling of loneliness, sometimes isolation. There's blurred boundaries between my work and my home. This becomes the always on culture. So I think organizations have duty of care, but not all of them do that. I know for a fact that PricewaterhouseCoopers have actually said that, I think 2021, they said that digital well-being is going to be a focus for the leadership training. So it's sort of big companies, the forward-thinking companies already doing that. Deloitte has a similar program as well. And I think it's going to come, or it has to come, to other corporations as well as part of the well-being package, because you cannot talk physical, mental, not touching the digital. And it has its own nuances. So if a company said, okay, so I want to do something about this, right? So what do I do? So first, as everywhere, you're possibly going to, maybe you say the same in your trainings as well, is just assess it, have a screenshot of what's happening now, what is going on now. And it's just starting that conversation, whether it's through measuring a questionnaire or so on. It's important because the usual employee surveys, they might not grasp the things like, for example, they might be angst about pressure to respond to emails very quickly, or not ability to switch off after 6 o'clock. I've heard examples myself. One friend of mine was telling that she suggested her manager that maybe I shouldn't reply to your emails after 8 p.m. And that was not sort of received very well, that, my emails, you should reply whenever I send them. So that is part of the culture that it's not necessarily going to show up in employee service. The things that I would say the companies need to look out for, and it's because it's very likely there's going to be some problem there, is that is there time in employees' days for uninterrupted time? Because as I said, 60% of interruptions happen because of technologies. We switch tasks at least 3 times in 15 minutes, every 5 minutes when we work online. And this, the Gloria Mark, actually, the American scientist, has done a very interesting research that showed that only after 20 minutes of task switching increases cortisol. So that means we feel more stressed. So if at the end of the day, of your working day, you feel stressed and you don't know why, it's most likely because you've been switching tasks very quickly and very often. Mm-hmm. So is there an opportunity for employees to have uninterrupted work? Is there opportunity to have a deep work session where I can block myself 2 hours and I know that I won't be interrupted, and I can feel that I can allow myself not to be reachable for 2 hours and, work on the project? Is there alignment of working methods? When do we agree to work online and have a Zoom call? And when do we agree to have live? So, for example, also research shows that if we need a creative sort of session, it's better for innovation to have live meeting. Mm-hmm. So if you have 2 groups and one is brainstorming online and the other one is brainstorming live, the one that's brainstorming live does better. But there are things that perfectly beautifully done online. Also, the camera is on or off. Zoom fatigue, as I said, is real. So people should not be pushed to have cameras all the time. Do employees have enough time for mind wandering? Also, the research shows that when we have time, like our brain's ability to look for new things and for novelty is actually in us. It's in our genes. We do that all the time if we have space. But if our brain is overloaded, then it chooses to take the shortcut and take the most easiest way, which is usually the most boring way, to be honest. And just look at them effectively. How do they spend their time? What's the email culture? There was a McKinsey report that said that almost 30% of daily time is spent managing emails. 30%, third of your day managing emails. That's crazy. Are we paid to, write emails? I don't think so. And 70% of people check it straight away because there's this anxiety that I'll miss something very important, or, if a manager writes to 3 colleagues and one always answers first and I'm the one to answer last, what does that say about me, and so on. And also, do they have a predictable unplug time? Again, research shows that, Harvard research showed that those consultants who worked with clients, those who had predictable plug off time, that means that they cut out the other communication, they had better relationship with their clients, they made more sales, compared to those who were always available. So it's a paradox. You're always available to your client, but actually those who are not always available, they have better relationships. So there's lots of things to sort of do. But the first one is, I would say, take a screenshot and start the conversation about it. Because as everything, if you don't talk about it, it doesn't exist.
Exactly. And you started from assessment, but what would be your suggestion? What next steps companies should take? For instance, okay, we assessed on these different dimensions which you mentioned. What else I need to do? And maybe you could tell like good examples from your practice, because I'm pretty much sure that you saw a lot of different examples how it works. And I think that in Lithuania, as it's quite new concept, maybe you can just share these good practices from where to start and some small steps, because I know that our listeners sometimes is saying, we are not Facebook, we are not Google, we can't afford. So maybe you can tell some examples from SME side, something like that.
First of all, I would say that do not take example from Facebook. Yeah. I don't think they do have a very healthy digital culture, to be honest. Okay, so the 3 steps is obviously assess, but we talked about the dangers and the bad things, but also important to assess what the good things happen, because the being online digital helps you maybe to create communities, to upskill and learn, and that upskilling becomes available for people who maybe live not in the big cities. So there's lots of benefits from that as well. So it's important to sort of pin those down and know. The other one would be education. Definitely, it's such a new topic, and sometimes people are not aware of why they feel stressed at the end of the day, and why multitasking is not good for them, and why interruptions is actually making them less productive, and that actually even having your phone next to you reduces your IQ about 10 points. All these things are important, and I would say this education would have to start from the leadership. Because if there's no leadership buy-in, as we know, as everywhere, nothing's going to roll. So I would start maybe a workshop for leadership. I would then sort of roll out it, maybe even something as simple as lunch and learn sessions throughout the organization on different topics. One could be productivity. What can you do? What simple habits can you do in your every single day that would allow you just to raise your level of productivity just a little bit? And then you can talk about the personal life. What are my values as an employee, and how my technology helps or hinders my values. If my value is after work to unplug and spend time with my family, but actually my phone stats show that I spend an hour and a half on Instagram, do they align or help, right? So it's just education. But education alone, of course, it's not going to help, because, as we know, there is this information action fallacy trap, right? Where people say that, because if I tell everyone how, bad or good something else, they will start using it. But with this logic, then people wouldn't smoke, right? Because they have all the information how bad it's for you, but they still do it. So I think one of the things is, after education thing, is actually shaping the environment as well. So again, you asked for example. So Deloitte, for example, in their company, they rolled out this communication charter. That means that every team have to sort of sign this communication charter, in which employees, they first list their available hours, because they sometimes work across different time zones. Sometimes they work from home, and maybe, for example, if I'm a single mom, I have to take care of my kids. That might mean that my morning is not available, right? So first they say, what are the available hours? As well as saying, what are my golden hours? Okay, I know that the hours that are productive for me most, and I'm going to reserve those every day for the project I work on, and protect it with my life. No meetings there, no Slack notifications, nothing. I actually just go to work on that's what important. So you sort of give your available hours. Then need to sort of have a discussion within the team, and Deloitte does that. What is the urgency for different channels, right? So, for example, Slack notifications. How quickly am I expected to answer a Slack message? How quickly am I expected to answer an email? If there's something urgent, what channel do we choose? Is it okay to check Slack only once a day? Is it okay to, maybe check my Teams messages only twice a day? So I would, these agreements are important, because if they are not there, then what happens? We monitor it all the time. Mm-hmm. And then we have a lot of channels to monitor. And then you end up, spending a third of your day managing emails and then managing other communication channels because you're afraid to miss something, and just become a bit frazzled, and your productivity drops down. Also, this right to disconnect is in the communication charter as well. So what is the working hours that we finish working and we actually don't check the emails, we don't take calls, we don't send emails? That's very important, right? And that is very important. I know that in some countries there is a legislation already, like in Spain, I think France, Canada recently, as actually government has said that employees have right to disconnect, and you as an employer should not contact them after 6 o'clock. The problem with that is that in that sort of legislation, there is no penalties there. So, it's taken as a recommendation, but not always implemented. So just talking about it, so agreements like that can help. It's a very good step. Then creating maybe environments for social learning, where we can talk about how do I feel at the end of the day? Am I annoyed about being interrupted all the time? And have conversations about it regularly. How have the social learning, like people can learn from each other. How do I manage a screen-free break? What do I do to have a screen-free break? Because saying have a break from the laptop just to look at the phone, it's not really a break for your brain, right? So I think if you just start with that would be a very good way forward. But also, actually, the problem with this is, I think, what is the problem with this? That it's never done. It's never going to be done. It's a little bit like, like you're never done with diet. If you want to have a healthy relationship with food, it's every day you have to make that choice that I'm choosing, this food over this food. It's exactly the same with the digital well-being and our sort of relationship with the devices. It's never done. It's a continuous work. And, this is not going from our lives anywhere. It's actually going to get even deeper and more intense with the metaverse coming and, us living in virtual worlds and so on. We already see that with kids, how they crazy about the Roblox and they don't want to see anything else. So, it's continuous work. And that's going to be... that's the difficulty with it, that, you're never done. You can't run a half-a-year project and say, I'm done, digital well-being is established. So the continuous working, having the feedback, and changing the environment as it needs.
I think, that we are currently just seeing tip of the iceberg, because it just started. And I think what you mentioned about just talking about all these difficult sometimes topics within business area, it's a good start for some companies. I agree that we have good examples, which maybe are a little bit already matured in this topic, but a lot of companies, they are just started talking about, psychological safety and all these kind of things, which are like not natural yet. So what you are saying, I really agree that just starting from training, from opening to this conversation, it's a good starting point. What about measurements? Can we measure success in this well-being area? And what would be your suggestions? Because I think, each and every concept we would like to implement and we are eager to start. But what about, results? How we can say, is it already okay, or yeah.
Every time I talk about KPIs, I remember this little story, which I'm going to share here, because this shows the importance of the KPIs and how the KPI can turn around. And it's basically, when you do a KPI, you say, what game am I inviting people to play here, right? And the story is actually is historical story. It's from the early 20th century, and it's maybe you know the story, but maybe listeners don't know. It's happens in Hanoi, which is Vietnam's capital. And back then they had an infestation problem with rats. There was lots of rats in the city. So the municipality of the city decided to ask for citizens to help, sort of to get rid of those rats by setting traps for them. And to motivate and to encourage to do that, they were paid a little money for every rat killed. the way you had to prove that you killed the rat is to bring a rat tail. It's a lovely job of someone's to collect the tails, of course. But what happened, obviously, it doesn't take a scientific genius to figure out that soon in the city there were lots of tailless rats running around, right? So they weren't killed. They were just running without the tails because someone caught them, cut the tail off, got the money, and let them roam free. But the unexpected side of the story was that people actually started breeding rats. So there were rat farms that in the city, and the effect was actually absolutely opposite. They were not less, but more, just for the wrong KPI, right? So with the well-being, it's very, why I say it's, you have to be very careful, because if you say, what do people who are well do? They take less sick days off, right? And that's going to be our measure. We will measure how many sick days people take. What that might happen, that people, you have lower sick days, but maybe they just came to work sick because there was pressure of them not to take a sick day. So with these, it's notoriously difficult to find a good KPI. First of all, because wellness is subjective. When I feel well and you feel well, it's not the same. We have different tolerance levels, right? But I think I will come back to the fact that it's very important for the organization to keep measuring the temperature and have those conversations about how do we feel, and how are we happy with the environment we have. But first, there has to be an education of knowing what to expect. So education and constant feedback loop is important. I think what you would see as a side effect if you have your digital wellness right, you would possibly see the increase in productivity, you would possibly see increase in retention or loyalty, you would possibly see increase in your brand sort of awareness, because it's a very good employer branding thing. Okay, we take care not only of your physical and mental, but we take care, we are aware that you work in the digital world, and we take care of that as well. Mm-hmm. But personally, if I as a person want to check whether I'm okay with my digital well-being, right? So there are two things. How well do I manage to focus what I need to focus? Like how quickly I can zone in into something without first checking Facebook, then checking email, then answering the email, then seeing on some page, a sale for kids' clothing, then, and after traveling around like for 20 minutes, I'll go like, oh, okay, now I'm going to work. And the other one is when I switch off from work, how quickly I can actually switch off and relax and do something else. Or am I, sitting at the dinner table with my family, but still replying and doing the to-do list in my head? So these are, I'd say, for me personally, it's the two things that tells me that something is off if one of them is not working.
It's great. Actually, I was following your advice, and now I'm thinking maybe I need to work more on digital well-being, because for me, for example, it's quite difficult to, distract with day work and family matters in the evening, because I already 8 years work from home. So it's like so interconnected, and, it's not so easy. So I think I will use this advice. Okay, the final question, which I always ask my guest is, if you had a chance to create just one innovation, what would it be?
Oh, what a good question. And it's a good one because it's a very difficult one. I don't know. When I think about innovation, I always think about some sort of technology, and usually I think of, a wearable or an app or something else. So the first thing that came to my head is some sort of wearable. But at the same time, I know that wearables have this little risk that we lose our interoception. That means our own ability to read our body. Like if we rely on an app to tell us when it's time to have a drink of water, we lose our own sense to say, when am I thirsty? And the interoception in reading your bodily signals, it's actually important, not only that, okay, I know my body, whether I'm hungry, thirsty, or tired, or need to sleep, but it's also very this is very correlated with your emotions. People who read their bodies better, they actually recognize their emotions better as well. They understand, am I anxious? Am I sad? Am I angry? What is happening with me? And that leads to a better mental health. So I would like to maybe create a wearable that helps you train this internal muscle to recognize your own needs, whether it's physical, whether it's mental, and what do I need? Do I need to focus? Do I need to switch off? Do I need to back off? But to train so I recognize it rather than some app tells me that you should do it.
Amazing. I hope that one day you will create it. So, Lina, thank you.
If someone hears me, please contact me.
We will record everything, so someone definitely will hear you. Lina, thank you so much for being with us and sharing your insights here. It was wonderful to have you. And thank you to all our listeners, and see you in our next episode. Bye.
Thank you. It's been amazing. Thanks a lot. Bye.